It's Christmas Eve, 2025. While most of Chicago prepares for the holidays, wrapping presents, gathering family, planning festive meals, something sinister unfolds in the darkness. Not one shooting, not two, but three separate violent incidents, all occurring within hours of each other across the city. And by dawn, one man is dead, three more are wounded. A suspect with a knife has disappeared into the night, and authorities are left asking the same haunting question that residents are waking up to on December 24th. What is happening to this city? This is the story of Chicago's Christmas Eve violence, a night when the holiday spirit was shattered by gunfire, chaos, and unanswered questions. And the most troubling part? These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern, a dangerous, escalating pattern that has federal authorities threatening to pull funding from the city's transit system, and residents questioning whether they can even feel safe getting from one neighborhood to another.
The first incident arrives just after midnight. It's 12:04 a.m. on Wednesday, December 24th. In the Englewood neighborhood on Chicago's South Side, one of the city's most volatile areas, a group of four men are standing outside on South Houston Street in the 7000 block. They're gathered in the cold, early morning darkness. We don't know what they're doing there. We don't know if they knew each other. What we do know is this. They were about to become victims of a coordinated, brutal attack. Two unknown men approach them. Not a crowd, not a mob, just two men. They don't say anything, they don't make demands. They simply approach, and they start shooting. This isn't a mugging gone wrong. This isn't a dispute that escalates. This is an execution. Calculated, intentional, precise. One of the four victims takes a bullet directly to the head. He dies at the scene. His body remains on South Houston Street as police arrive to process what will become another homicide statistic in a city already drowning in them. But the shooter doesn't stop. The attack continues. A 27-year-old man is shot in the right leg. He's transported to the University of Chicago Hospital in good condition, though good condition means he was shot and will spend the holiday season recovering from a gunshot wound. A 38-year-old man suffers a graze wound to his right arm, also transported to University of Chicago Hospital, good condition. Another man, 33 years old, is grazed on his right forearm, but refuses medical treatment entirely. He walks away from the scene, carrying his wound into the Chicago night. So we have four victims, one deceased, three wounded in varying degrees, and by the time police arrive and begin their investigation, the two shooters have vanished. No identification, no description detailed enough to make an arrest, no suspects in custody, nothing. The question that Area 1 detectives are not asking is one that will haunt this case. Who were these two men? What was the motive? Was this personal? Was this gang-related? Was this a case of mistaken identity? And perhaps most troublingly, will they ever be found? As of this moment, there have been no arrests. The investigation remains open. The case remains unsolved. But that's only the first incident of the night.
By 4 a.m. on the same Christmas Eve morning, while the Englewood investigation is still in its early stages, something else happens. On the outbound Kennedy Expressway, Interstate 90, near Division Street on Chicago's northwest side, a possible shooting is reported. Illinois State Police are called. They arrive on the scene around 6:45 a.m. to investigate. The response is immediate and dramatic. All outbound lanes are closed from Augusta Boulevard to North Avenue. Traffic backs up. The morning commute, already chaotic on Christmas Eve when people are rushing to finish last-minute errands, heading to O'Hare for holiday flights, desperately trying to get somewhere warm, grinds to a halt. The expressway remains closed for approximately 45 minutes before reopening around 7 a.m. But then at 8 a.m., it closes again. Another investigation, another scene to process, another reason for drivers to sit in their cars, wondering what's happening, checking their watches, calculating if they'll make their flights. Here's where it gets strange. The Kennedy Expressway shooting is confirmed. Police have investigated a possible shooting incident. State police have secured the scene. And yet, there are no reported injuries. Nobody shot, nobody wounded, nobody killed. So what exactly was investigated? What did officers find? And if there are no victims, what made this incident serious enough to shut down one of Chicago's major highways during morning rush hour? This remains one of the unexplained elements of Chicago's Christmas Eve violence, a shooting that may or may not have actually occurred, an incident serious enough to warrant massive traffic disruption, but mysterious enough to leave us without clear answers. But even as the highway begins to reopen, another shooting is about to grab national attention.
To understand this next incident, we need to go back in time slightly. The previous evening, Tuesday, December 23rd, just before Christmas, around 1:22 a.m., a CTA Pink Line train is traveling through downtown Chicago. It passes through the Loop, that historic heart of the city where office towers pierce the sky and the L trains carry hundreds of thousands of commuters every day. On this particular train, in the 100 block of North Wells Street, something is about to unfold that will become yet another piece of evidence in a terrifying puzzle. Chicago's transit system is no longer safe. Two men are on this train. Both are passengers, a 44-year-old man and a 23-year-old man, and they're arguing with a third man. This third man is armed, but not with a gun, not yet. He's carrying a knife, a large blade, an instrument of violence ready to be deployed. The argument becomes physical. The situation escalates from words to contact. Fists may fly, bodies collide in the tight space of a moving train car, and then something happens that changes everything. The 23-year-old passenger, thinking quickly, acting in what he probably believed was self-defense, pulls out a gun. On a CTA train, during the early morning hours, in the middle of downtown Chicago, a firearm appears. And in that instant, the dynamic shifts. The knife-wielding suspect sees an opportunity. In the chaos of the struggle, in the confined space of a train car traveling through the city, he manages to gain control of that gun. He wrestles it away from the 23-year-old. And now the suspect has a firearm. What happens next is brutal. What happens next is fatal. The suspect fires. Once. Twice. The bullets find their targets in the cramped space of the CTA car. The 44-year-old man is hit in the abdomen. The 23-year-old is shot in the wrist. Both men are bleeding. Both men are in crisis. And the suspect simply flees. He abandons the gun. He leaves the scene. He disappears into the Chicago night. And no one has apprehended him yet.
The 44-year-old man who was shot in the abdomen is transported to Northwestern Hospital. He's in critical condition. Doctors work to save his life, but it's too late. By the time he arrives, by the time the trauma team mobilizes, by the time every available resource is deployed, it's not enough. Raymond S. Harrison Jr. is pronounced dead at Northwestern Hospital. He becomes more than a statistic. He becomes a name. He becomes someone's brother, son, friend, colleague. He becomes a victim of what is now being recognized as an epidemic of violence on Chicago's public transportation system. And his death occurs just 2 days before Christmas, just 48 hours before a holiday meant to celebrate peace, family, and hope. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office confirms his identity, Raymond S. Harrison Jr., age 44. He's no longer just a number in a police report. He's a name in a death certificate, a tragedy,
a loss that will reverberate through his family's Christmas, through his community, through the broader conversation about safety in this city. But Raymond S. Harrison Jr. is not the only victim of this incident.
The younger man, just 23 years old, survives. He's shot in the wrist, but he survives. He's transported to Northwestern Hospital, the same hospital where Raymond S. Harrison Jr. was pronounced dead. He's listed in fair condition, which means he's stable enough to recover, but damaged enough to carry the physical and psychological scars of this incident for the rest of his life. Questions linger about this young man. Who was he? What was he doing on a CTA train at 1:22 a.m.? Why did he have a gun? Was he trained in its use? Was he a licensed carrier? Or was this a weapon obtained through other means? And most importantly, why did he engage a knife-wielding suspect on a moving train? Was this an act of self-defense, or did he escalate a situation that could have been avoided? These are the questions that investigators are asking. These are the details that remain unclear in the official reports. But there's another question that looms even larger. Where is the suspect?
A man with a knife. A man who overpowered a gun owner. A man who fired bullets in a crowded CTA train car. A man who killed Raymond S. Harrison Jr. And this man is not in custody. This man has not been arrested. This man remains free somewhere in Chicago. Area 3 detectives are investigating. Chicago Police Department resources are being devoted to finding him. But as of this moment, as of right now, the suspect remains at large. Police have not released a detailed description of the suspect that would allow the public to identify and locate him. Police have not released information about his possible movements or whereabouts. Police have not announced an arrest. What we know is this: he is dangerous. He has a history of carrying weapons. He has demonstrated the capability and willingness to use lethal force, and he is walking free in this city. For Raymond S. Harrison Jr.'s family, this must be an additional layer of trauma. The man who killed their loved one remains uncaptured. He remains a threat. He could be anyone. He could be anywhere.
Now here's where the bigger picture comes into focus. The CTA Pink Line shooting on Tuesday, December 23rd, that is not an isolated incident. That is not a one-time aberration. That is part of a disturbing and accelerating pattern. In the 5 days leading up to Christmas Eve, Chicago's CTA transit system experienced at least 4 violent incidents. 4 in 5 days. On Friday, December 19th, a man set a fire on a CTA Blue Line train near Damon Avenue, causing service disruptions and raising questions about security screening at stations. On Sunday, December 21st, a woman attacked and battered 2 people on a West Side CTA bus, injuring multiple passengers. On Monday, December 22nd, 3 suspects allegedly carried out a knife-point robbery on a CTA Red Line train, targeting passengers and stealing their belongings at gunpoint. And then on Tuesday, December 23rd, the incident we've been discussing, a man with a knife takes a gun, shoots 2 passengers, and kills Raymond S. Harrison Jr. on a CTA Pink Line train in the heart of downtown Chicago. 4 violent incidents, 5 days, all on public transportation, all in a city that the Chicago Transit Authority just promised would be safer. And this is where the situation becomes even more complicated.
In early December 2025, just weeks before these Christmas Eve incidents, the Chicago CTA and the Chicago Police Department unveiled what they called a security surge plan. This plan was designed to address the growing violence on public transportation. It included more police officers patrolling the system. It included private security contractors. It included canine units trained to detect weapons and contraband. It included an expanded voluntary program allowing off-duty officers to sign up to patrol CTA lines during their personal time. On paper, it looked comprehensive. On paper, it looked like a serious response to a serious problem. But the Federal Transit Administration rejected it. They rejected it hours after it was implemented. They said the plan did not go far enough. They said it did not adequately address the scope of the problem. And they issued a warning. If Chicago did not take more aggressive crime reduction measures, if the city did not demonstrate a serious commitment to protecting riders, federal funding up to $50 million could be cut off. $50 million. That's the stakes. That's what's on the line. And it's all happening against the backdrop of multiple shootings, multiple assaults, and a growing sense among residents that the transit system has become a hunting ground rather than a public service. Now, statistically speaking, violent crime on CTA buses, trains, platforms, and stations is down 2.3% year-to-date through mid-December when compared to the previous year. That's an important fact. That's a data point that suggests some progress is being made. And yet, shootings are up.
According to Chicago Police Department data analyzed by ABC7's data team, there is one trend that stands out, one statistic that defies the overall downward trend in transit violence. Shootings on CTA property are up significantly. Last year, 2024, 8 shootings on the CTA system. This year, 2025, 12 shootings as of mid-December. And that count doesn't even include the incident on the Pink Line that occurred just days ago. Think about that. 50% more shootings. The same system, the same city, a year apart. And the trajectory is clear. It's getting worse, not better. This is the context in which Raymond S. Harrison Jr. was killed. This is the environment in which a suspect with a knife boarded a CTA train and ended a man's life. This is the reality that residents are waking up to on Christmas Eve as they hear about 3 separate shootings across the city within the span of a few hours. And it raises a question that goes to the heart of this story. Here's what nobody is saying directly, but what many are thinking. Could these 3 Christmas Eve incidents be connected? Could there be a pattern beyond just the fact that they happened on the same day? The South Side execution-style killing in Englewood. 2 shooters, precise, brutal, professional in their execution. The Kennedy Expressway shooting, mysterious, possibly occurring, serious enough to warrant major traffic disruption, but no injuries reported. The CTA incident, a man with a knife, a stolen gun, a deadly shooting on public transportation. Are these the work of rival gangs? Are these coordinated attacks? Are these random incidents that just happen to converge on the same morning? Or are they something else entirely? Symptoms of a deeper, more systemic problem with the city's approach to gun violence and public safety? The truth is, based on the available information, these incidents appear to be unrelated. The Englewood shooting and the Kennedy Expressway incident and the CTA Pink Line shooting don't appear to be connected by the same perpetrators or the same motive, but they are connected by something more profound. They are all part of the same story. The story of Christmas Eve 2025 in Chicago. The story of a city struggling with gun violence. The story of public spaces that are no longer safe. The story of a holiday that should be about peace being shattered by gunfire and tragedy. So here's where things stand as we speak. In Englewood, Area 1 detectives are actively investigating the shooting that killed 1 man and wounded 3 others. The 2 suspects remain unidentified. No arrests have been made. The case remains open. On the Kennedy Expressway, Illinois State Police have investigated the reported shooting. The details remain somewhat opaque. No injuries were reported, but the incident was serious enough to warrant major traffic disruption. And in the Loop, on the CTA Pink Line, Area 3 detectives are hunting for a suspect, a man armed with a knife, a man who obtained a firearm during a struggle, a man who fired lethal shots, a man who killed Raymond S. Harrison Jr. and wounded a 23-year-old. This suspect remains at large. This killer walks free. And with each passing day, with each passing hour, the trail potentially grows colder. But there's one more piece of this puzzle that we need to address. Somewhere in Chicago, Raymond S. Harrison Jr.'s family is grieving. They're preparing for a holiday
that will forever be defined by loss. Christmas will never be the same. Every December 24th for the rest of their lives will carry the weight of this tragedy. Every Christmas tree, every holiday song, every family gathering will be tinged with the memory of his absence. The 23-year-old survivor is dealing with physical injuries and psychological trauma. He was involved in a violent altercation. He drew a weapon. He lost control of that weapon. A man died as a result. Regardless of the legal implications, regardless of who was at fault, that young man will carry this experience with him forever. And the community at large, the people who use the CTA, who walk the streets of Englewood, who drive the Kennedy Expressway, who call Chicago home, they're living with a heightened sense of fear, a sense that danger is closer than they thought, a sense that the systems meant to protect them are not working as they should. Section 14, the institutional response. Are we doing enough? Mayor Brandon Johnson has spoken publicly about the violence on the CTA. He's acknowledged the problem. He's called for resources. He's invoked the need for a comprehensive approach: policing, preventative services, mental health support. All of that is necessary, he said. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The security surge plan that was supposed to address this issue has already been rejected by federal authorities as insufficient. The federal government is threatening to pull $50 million in funding, and shootings on the CTA are up 50% compared to last year. So what does doing enough actually look like? What would constitute an adequate response to this crisis? And more importantly, are we willing to implement it? These are the questions that should be asked in the days and weeks following Christmas Eve 2025. These are the conversations that should happen, not just about these 3 specific incidents, but about the broader pattern they represent. But there's one final piece of this story that we haven't fully explored yet. Section 15, the broader context, Chicago's violence epidemic. Chicago's relationship with gun violence is not new. The city has been struggling with shootings, homicides, and gang-related violence for decades. But what's different about 2025 is the specificity of the crisis. It's no longer just happening in isolated neighborhoods. It's happening on public transportation. It's happening in the Loop, the heart of downtown, where tourists walk and office workers commute. It's happening on highways during morning rush hour. It's happening everywhere. This Christmas Eve violence is not an anomaly. It's not a one-day tragedy. It's a manifestation of a deeper problem. A problem with gun access, a problem with conflict resolution, a problem with mental health services, a problem with how we as a city and a society address violence before it reaches lethal force. And yet, on Christmas Eve 2025, here we are. 3 shootings, 1 dead, 3 others wounded, a suspect still at large, federal funding threatened, and a city asking itself, what happens next?
As we move forward, as the investigations continue, several critical questions remain unanswered. In Englewood, who were the 2 shooters? What was their motive? Did they know their victims? Was this gang-related? Was this a case of mistaken identity? Or was there another reason entirely for this targeted, brutal attack? On the Kennedy Expressway, what exactly occurred? Was there actually a shooting, or was it something else? If a shooting did occur, why were there no reported injuries? What did investigators find at the scene? And why is so little information available to the public about this incident? On the CTA Pink Line, who is the suspect still at large? What's his background? Does he have a criminal history? Was he known to police? Why was he carrying a knife on the train? What was the nature of his argument with the 2 passengers? Could he be identified if the public had access to surveillance footage or a detailed description? And most importantly, will these cases be solved? Will justice be served for Raymond S. Harrison Jr.? Will the 23-year-old survivor get answers? Will the people of Chicago ever feel safe again? These are the questions that will define the coming weeks and months. Christmas Eve 2025 will be remembered in Chicago not as a day of peace and preparation, but as a day when the fragility of our public safety became undeniable, when a man died on a CTA train, when another man was shot execution-style on a South Side street, when a highway was shut down by an incident we still don't fully understand. But this is also the moment when something has to change, when authorities have to step up, when communities have to unite, when the federal government's threat to cut $50 million in transit funding becomes not a warning, but a catalyst for real change, real action, real commitment to making this city safe again. Raymond S. Harrison Jr. deserves justice. The survivors of these incidents deserve answers, and every person who uses Chicago's public transportation system deserves to feel safe, to board a train without fear, to walk a street without worry, to spend Christmas with their families instead of in a hospital or a morgue. Christmas Eve 2025 is not the end of this story. It's the beginning of questions that demand answers, the beginning of investigations that must be solved, the beginning of a conversation about what kind of city we are and what kind of city we want to be. The suspects are still out there, the investigations are still ongoing, and the people of Chicago are still waiting for the one thing that should never be in short supply in this city: safety.
This is the story of Chicago Christmas Eve 2025. A story that began with gunfire and ended with unanswered questions. But it's a story that's far from over. And in the weeks and months to come, as investigators piece together evidence, as communities demand accountability, as federal authorities hold this city to a higher standard, one thing is certain: Christmas Eve 2025 will be remembered as the day everything changed, the day when it became impossible to ignore the violence, the day when the question was no longer if something needs to change, but when. The answers are coming, justice is coming, and Chicago will be watching.